And
Yeah.
that was going to be my first question to you, to kind of continue that link. What does it mean exactly for you to be a perennialist, and how does that manifest in your daily life? We can go there if you want, or
certainly, yeah, it's an important question. I was asked about that yesterday by someone, and it's an important question. And immediately, we'd have to say that there are different streams of perennialism. So you have two ideas, I think, two broad ideas. They all say a similar thing. They all say that the great traditions have a core base, or a common core, or a similar base, or similar principles, or are tending in the same direction. And from that, some people say, well, therefore you can pick and choose and extract yourself in a Gnostic way, if you like, where to go. Other more, if you like, traditional perennialists say, well, actually the best way to do it is to work in one tradition and deepen yourself in that. So you might, whatever way you choose, you're still going the right direction, whether you're Sufi or Catholic or whatever, if you're being mystical, but you're deepening your knowledge of one thing. So this is a difference. Some perennialists would reject, the religious structure of, that tradition, even though, like Charles Upton, for example, who follows that Sufi tradition. Obviously, he has to embed himself, or well, there's debates about it, but he is embedded in Islamic scholarship as well. So that's not inconsistent. And when you get to a point, at the depth that he is, he would have as much respect for the path in the Christian tradition, or whatever. So they don't see them as mutually exclusive, which is important, where some traditionalists would say, no, this is my exclusive path. So there's different emphasis in that, and it creates a challenge. And these are where some of the most difficult issues come in relation to the mystical path, between the esoteric and the exoteric. So you might be able to engage in all kinds of wonderful things about, whatever. You might have all the cities and all that, but they may amount to nothing if it's not related to, in some views, if it's not anchored in a context. And this is a great difficulty, because a lot of Gnostics with a small g will reject the idea that they're bound by any rules, that they should follow. Why should they follow commandments, or why should they follow? And this is the great difficulty, and this is part of a Western decadence, if you like, probably because Western society is collapsing, that they have assumed that the inculcated Judeo-Christian principles in society are going to continue. But they're not going to continue. They're dependent on some conditions that when you take away all the theological input, there won't be that principle. So what do you say to a person that doesn't believe, that they can't take your life, that doesn't? What do you say to a person that has no conception of any restrictions? It's not that they have a problem in doing it. It's that they have no conception that there's anything wrong with it. And especially when you've undermined the legal protection. So there is a tension there that in the West, and in particular, if we look at the spiritual movement in California, the spiritual movement in California, it's been a base for the spiritual movement. But they choose a particular type. They choose, they're disposed towards Orientalism. They're disposed towards India, Buddhism, and in some ways, of course, what else is California famous for, apart from being, where the empire went to establish its base, the British Empire, for communications and computer. It's famous for the military-industrial complex. That's where its beating heart is. Okay, so you have this strange. You say, well, okay, that could be a reaction against the military-industrial complex. Some of it is. Could also be a continuation of the military-industrial complex, because you can say, well, the Bhagavad Gita shows, that war is okay and just do your best. There is these arguments, and there are difficulties there when you say, well, so there's a very strong idea in people that are interested in posthumanism, transhumanism, that we'll have spirituality, but there's no dogma. We can't have any dogma. And you say, well, okay, well, is it okay to steal? Where do we start? You know what I mean? These are serious questions, because these are being undermined now, because there's plenty of people now. It's a thing that I wouldn't have thought that I would have seen in my life, that believe morally that it's okay to steal. That's because of political changes. This is quite incredible, and soon they will believe that it's okay morally to kill. So the question is the link as well between the. So it's not actually a lot of the questions are not about the esoteric dimensions. There's loads of traditions to draw on. It's about what rules do you stand for in relation to how we run society. Simple things like that, and that's a kind of becoming more and more difficult, especially when you abolish rights. So I did ask someone last week. I was saying, I don't really understand what you're saying. Just give us a simple question. Do you believe it's wrong to steal? And I didn't get an answer back. Now maybe they overlooked the question, but I mean, I just want to find out what it is. So the perennialist, in many senses, is referring as well to an exoteric tradition, some rules. And when you look at them, a lot of them are not really, and its core is, you're not meant to be killing, you're not meant to be stealing. I mean, we can argue about the exceptions and the penumbra, but I mean, there's some principles that are pretty consistent in all cultures. Now, when you say, well, we don't want any of that, well, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what that means. And then you say, well, why do we have these rules? Now, if we take an idea that, well, say in a Christian context, you're a divine reflection, you're created in the image of God, I must recognize you because of that, and therefore I mustn't do harm to you, and I must help you, in fact, whatever. And then you find a similar principle in Buddhism, and principles about right words and that, and you say, well, there's similarities here. We can get some basic heuristics, a rule of conduct. We shouldn't be saying bad things about people. We shouldn't be hurting humans or animals or whatever, and we can take them. So that's the difficult bit if one is just Gnostic, or if one takes a particular path. And in relation to magic, there is a distinction between magic and mysticism, which is difficult to make at times. But if we go back to the Renaissance, there was distinctions, and scholars have talked about the difference between the natural magic and divine light magic, for example. Now, I think divine light magic is the core bit. It's about a higher order thing. It's not about your will in this thing. It's not about getting things. It's not about achieving things. It's about finding mechanisms to maintain contact with a higher dimension that people believe they're interacting with and going to. And into that come a load of issues. For example, a lot of what people seem to be talking about, for me, when they're talking about some practices or spiritual practices, they seem to be in the lower astral dimensions. Seeing all these strange creatures, they seem to be in that. Now, the mystics don't want to be in there. They're not interested. That's not where they want to be. And they certainly don't want to go there when they're dead, insofar as they can understand what's there. But a lot of the sensational aspects, the sentimental aspects, the easily gained aspects, especially in the drug context, I'm not saying they don't get higher order things, but they're going into zones that other mystics don't really want to spend time in. Or if they have spent time, and I think Charles Upton talked about that, they don't believe that it's meaningful in the long term, because there's deeper principles, and deeper principles of, which comes back to what you think the ultimate thing is. I sometimes refer to the divine as the unbeknownst, because there's a lot of complications about particular words we use, but something which is the great mystery, if you like, which is beyond comprehension, beyond articulation, but that exists, and that I believe exists, and is what you are seeking to connect with. I don't know if that's addressed your or some of the questions that you raised. I'll stop there to give you a chance.